if you're like a lot of people, when you're first starting out making holsters, you don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of idea of what kind of tools you need to get, and you're really just looking for something to get the job done. When I first started making holsters, I took a 1-inch foam paintbrush, removed the tip, and put it in my drill press and made this. Used a wood chisel and some files and some sandpaper and just made a few grooves in it, and it worked pretty well. I used it, I don't know, several hundred orders on and off. Just having a wooden base, obviously it wobbles around in the drill press a little bit, so it takes a bit of effort to get it trued up so it spins nice and straight. So after a while I finally decided to upgrade a bit, and I dropped by my local Tandy, which isn't really all that local to me, but anyways, I picked up one of these guys. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them and have used them. They work pretty well, but they take a lot of elbow grease. And I've tried one of these before. This came in the little Tandy kit that I'm sure a lot of people have. I just stuck a bolt on there and a wing nut and tightened it down. The only problem with it is the groove is pretty much too narrow for my holsters. It's too thick really for a lot of stuff that I do. I guess it works okay for a single layer of about 8-ounce leather, but the diameter is way too large to get into the corners where the reinforcement pieces are and so forth. Obviously it only does outside corners, doesn't also do the inside corners. So I put this on the shelf and mainly just use this guy. Well, just recently I received a couple of sweet new cocobolo burnishers from Richard Loy over at Pro Edge Burnishers, and these are cocobolo with 3/8 inch hardened steel shafts. They have, obviously as you can see, they have several different grooves. I think according to his website, 1-inch flat on both of them. Looks like they both pretty much have the same grooves. 1-inch flat, 1/2 inch, 3/8, 5/16, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, and 1/16 inch. This guy here is his skirt chaser. It's much larger diameter, and I asked Richard and he agreed. Both of us believe that the larger diameter will probably result in a smoother overall burnish when, not so much smoother I guess, but less ripples along the way, just because it's a flatter surface area. As you're trying to burnish the edge, it'll have less likelihood of making an indentation in the leather itself, like something like this little guy would. And he also has a slot master, which is sort of similar to this one, but it has a stepped, I don't know if you can see in this picture, but it has a stepped tip to it. Whereas the one that I have here has more of a conical tip. And it has the same dimensions for the grooves, but obviously it's a smaller overall diameter wood. This one he has listed on his website at $41.99, and this one is at $45.99, and from what I read on his website, the prices include shipping. So that's a pretty good deal. So I'm going to give these a try. Okay, I have here a reinforcement piece for one of my pancake holsters. I've already edged and sanded a little bit and run the hand burnisher over these last week before I airbrushed these yesterday. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to rub a little thieving saddle soap over the edge. Take a dampened cloth, rub it in the saddle soap, and then just apply it to the edge. As you can see, I've already got the skirt chaser insert it into the grill. Let's give this a try. It looks like it's going to be the second slot for this 8-ounce leather. The third one. Got interrupted by one of my young kiddos coming in here asking me questions about Pokemon. So anyways, I've done this a little bit. It's working great. It's nice and smooth. I'm going to put just a little more saddle soap on. Do this a little bit more. Very nice. Works much better than my little 1-inch drum, or my 1-inch paintbrush wooden dowel handle. Okay, what I'm going to do now is going to, it's a little hard to tell in the, probably right now, but they have an airbrushed saddle tan with an airbrushed dark brown accent. These are Phoebing's dyes, Pro Oil dyes. So using the darker color that I airbrushed, I'm going to go around the edge and go ahead and dye the edge darker. You can dye the edge black, you can leave it natural if you want to. I used to dye all of my edges black, pretty much regardless of what color it was, unless it was a natural holster, which then I would probably either leave the leather natural or dye it light brown or maybe even dark brown, usually probably light brown. I found that the black looks nice, but also dyeing it the same color that the leather itself was dyed actually looks pretty good too. So this is a whole lot easier once the dye is wet right now, so it's pretty dark. Once it dries and evaporates and blends in, it'll pretty much be the same color as the airbrushed accented edge. But it's a whole lot easier to apply that than it is to try and trim it out with black, since there's such a color contrast there. So what I'll do now is I'll just let that dry for a few minutes, and then I'm going to rub some beeswax into the edge and take it back over to the burnisher. I said beeswax. This is actually a combination of about 50-50 paraffin and beeswax. So I'm just going to rub this into the edge. And obviously it's necessary to do all of this to the reinforcement pieces before you actually attach it, because you won't be able to do this once it's sewn onto the holster. So now we'll take it back over to the burnisher. This time I thought I'd give the hole master tip a try. So we'll remove the skirt chaser. If you're a klutz like me, Be very careful when you insert this into your drill press and hold on to it as you try and tighten down the chuck, just to make sure that it doesn't slip and fall out. I've ruined the tip of a couple drill bits by letting them slip out before I got the chuck tightened. They fell and landed on the metal base of my drill press. Okay, so as you remember, we've got some wax on the edge. I've already used the saddle soap on this. Sometimes your leather will be in between sizes on grooves, regardless of what kind of burnisher you have. They can't make them fit every exact thickness of leather, so you'll need to step up or down. Sometimes if the slot is slightly smaller, it'll help you get the outer edges of the leather, and if it's a little larger, it'll help you get the flatter perpendicular side of it a little bit better. So you have to just experiment with your piece, see which one's going to give you the best burnish. Not necessarily the best burnish, but the combination of will give you the burnish that you need. Every now and then it's a good idea to just touch the leather to your lip. It helps you to feel how much heat there is in the leather and whether or not you're actually building up any heat that's melting the wax into the edge. But you do want a little bit of heat. You don't want so much that it's actually going to burn it. That's working real nice. Check it out. Here's our burnished piece. It's a good idea at this point to just kind of rub over the edge a little bit to help remove any excess dye and wax that might be on the leather. See, we got a little bit of coloring coming off right there, but not a whole lot. And just to compare it to another piece. Again, this is just one that I used my hand burnisher on with a little bit of sandpaper. And hadn't really done, this is not intended to be finished, but it's far enough along that I could have at least put dye on it. But using saddle soap doesn't actually block the dye from penetrating into the leather. So that's a good step to use the saddle soap prior to putting the dye on, because when you brush it on, you want a nice smooth surface so that it's easier to apply. If it's real rough, like on this edge here, I haven't done anything to it. It's just raw leather. I've run the edger over it, but if I tried to put dye on this, it would just soak in really deep. It'd be a real fuzzy, blurry edge. It just wouldn't apply very clean. Whereas this dye here, you can see, hopefully, it went on nice and smooth with a nice clean transition edge. So that came out great. Here's his contact information. If you're in the market for a burnisher, I'd highly recommend checking him out.